Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow. We are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Center for the Preservation of Western Civilization at ITR World Headquarters in Central Iowa. The John Hendrickson and myself here today, ready to thrill and excite you on another episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative entertainment. We got to add more to that. It's not long enough.
I like it just fine.
You don't want more? The John Hendrickson is a little
Yes.
bit of an ad. It's kind of new.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Great. Welcome back to the studio, John.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
I know it is. Okay, so we're going to do kind of a roundup type of thing today, and there's just little things happening in policy and politics across the state of Iowa, so we're going to cover that. I am remembering today to remind everyone on the outset that to like and subscribe to the episode, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever it is. Make sure you like and subscribe and tell your friends. That will help us immensely. So that is assuming that you actually like the show and you're not just hate watching it because you're a liberal, which might be.
Could be, yeah.
In which case,
could
maybe
be.
you should still subscribe because if it's bringing you that much entertainment, then you should do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, let's just start off usual segment trivia. What do you last week's question, which at least I think multiple people got right. I know I knew what it was, which is rare.
Well, that was the William Howard Taft.
Yeah.
But
that was last time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
What do you got?
The question last week, nobody actually responded to.
Oh.
And it
See,
was
I don't even know my own show here. All right,
and
let's
so
go. Tell
the
me.
question was, what was the nickname that FDR gave to the justices
That's right.
that struck down the New
Yep.
Deal? And the answer was he gave them the name the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse,
Right.
the four conservatives on the court. So
Let me jump in. Before you give us the today's question. That idea of expanding and packing the court was floated by the left during the Biden administration. And I don't think they were ever, at least the administration was ever serious about that. Do you think that could be seriously proposed in the future by the left? Or is that chapter in American history so instructive that I don't think they would? What do you think?
I think it's actually a serious thing that could actually happen again.
Okay.
I do. I think that's an objective they actually have, especially if the court continues to be more conservative. They will look for ways to get around that.
There's no question that there is a decidedly Republican majority on the court, but their rulings aren't in lockstep with what conservatives or even mainstream Republicans would want. You get near unanimity of thought from the liberal justices, but as disappointing as some of those decisions have been as a conservative, I think it's difficult to say that they have just been blindly following whoever appointed them to the court.
That's true. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
and hopefully that would bring some sense to this conversation. I also would like to see some of that working the other way, but whatever. Here we are. So, sorry, I had to jump in because it's an issue that I care about. So, what do you got for this week?
No, it's a very important issue. Well, next week is St. Patrick's Day, so I thought I'd ask an Irish-themed question for our listeners, and this one is Civil War related because we don't ask a lot of Civil War questions.
No, we really don't.
No.
That's
so. During the Civil War, we know that the Irish were on both sides, both North and South. And so in 1828 in County Cork, Ireland, this former Confederate general was born. He came to the United States in 1849. He settled in Arkansas, and during the Civil War, he rose through the ranks. He was described as the Stonewall of the West, referring to the nickname of Stonewall Jackson because of his one of the better generals in the Army of the Tennessee. He also was controversial because in 1864 he petitioned his commanding officer and President Jefferson Davis to free slaves and enlist them and arm them to fight for the Southern Confederacy, which his petition was basically ignored.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
And then he was killed in the brutal charge at the Battle of Franklin in Tennessee. And so
All right.
we're looking at who is this gentleman, this Irish general, nicknamed the Stonewall of the West.
Okay. All right. That my guess is you got to know your Civil War history to know that one. So John threw you a tough one today, folks. So get at it. You went back, as you are off to do, to think back to the 1860s for this date in history, John. But I noticed that, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. It's been 6 years since COVID shutdown began. And we were talking about this the other day here in the office. And so I just want to touch on this a little bit. I think it was maybe the 11th of March that it was declared a global pandemic. I could be wrong on that date, but it was sometime around there. And then you saw within about a week or two things being, I guess, shut down. It was my last year in the legislature, and I remember us doing whatever mechanical things we needed to do to step away from session for an indeterminate period of time, because there's some constitutional things about when session begins and ends and how it runs. My point is this: I certainly don't want to sit around and think about the good old times of being stuck at home, but that was one of the most significant events in recent history. I mean, you think of news events that were captured the public attention, but it's certainly from a public policy standpoint, it's hard to think of anything in the last 20 plus, maybe decades beyond that has had more of an impact on our world around us and continues to have an impact to this day than COVID, and specifically the reaction to COVID. My point is this, John, and I want to get your take on this. We don't even talk about it. It is bizarre to me that it's almost our society has decided that we're not going to discuss that. There's no implications from that. We're just going to move on. And I don't get it. You know, every once in a while you see somebody still wearing a mask, fine, whatever. Every once in a while you see a news story that there's some new variant. Okay, if you enjoy that kind of fear, then I guess you would read that. But for most Americans or people in the world, they're like, that, just move on. But yet the impacts are still with us. And the public distrust of institutions is still with us. Why don't we ever talk about it?
That's a great question, and I the way I think about this is I think we become, and I think the culture at large has become, and this is a side effect of the largesse of the federal government, and so the response of COVID, in terms of whether you agree or disagree with what happened, I think Americans by and large have gotten so used to having the federal government respond and having federal involvement in basically almost every sector of our lives and in the economy that, you know, this is just something they just took for granted. And then the other thing too is that when you look at, for example, let's just say, you know, a lot of people were concerned because when some states closed churches, wouldn't let people worship. Well, that was a big concern for a lot of evangelicals and other Christians. But we've become more secular as a society, and so there's that portion as well, where a great portion of our culture just probably doesn't really doesn't see, and then probably doesn't bother them that much that this happened. And that's kind of a disturbing part. And you're seeing this also in some debates, not just here in Iowa, but in other states, they're looking at how do we respond if this happens again?
Well, that maybe is a big question. We as a society, look, we were insulated from it in Iowa. The reaction to COVID from Governor Reynolds and policymakers broadly were as good as any state in the union. And we enjoyed, it almost as if we were insulated from the worst of it here in Iowa. And I will always be thankful for that. You know, my children getting to go back to school in the fall, maybe chief among them. Not just because the 4-month spring break got to be a little much, but there were decisions made that have had a lasting impact. Our children across this country not being in school continues to have a negative impact, not just on educational achievement, but in their mental health. It's in the data. We continue to see negative consequences from, I guess, the quote-unquote vaccines. And one thing that you and I have talked about, John, but there's no question that the government's fiscal response to COVID and subsequent pieces of legislation have added greatly to the inflation in this country. If you're worried about affordability, you got to go back to COVID and follow that forward of just the almost unbelievable amount of fake money that the federal government threw at our economy. That absolutely has to cover that. And look, there's other things besides COVID response. There's other, I'm not getting into that, but these things over and over, these impacts ripple through our lives. That's one thing, and we don't talk about that. We have seen that our so-called experts were wrong. And they may not have just been wrong. They may have been wrong on purpose. They lied to us, John. And you talk about this federal government overreach and people are comfortable with that. Those folks that were tasked with responding to this, and I'm not even saying that it wasn't a bad virus that actually took some life. Sure, I'll accept that premise. But where were the investigations on that? How was that allowed to happen? How were a small group of people allowed not just to shut down our society, but to trample on a whole host of civil liberties? I think a lot of evangelical churches specifically shut down voluntarily. Fine, great. But in many parts of this country, they were not allowed to congregate. There is nothing that's more central to the Bill of Rights than the right to come together and worship. Nothing.
That's right.
If you are a Second Amendment advocate, and look, in Iowa, we have some specific protections from that, from taking your guns away. They took away, in Iowa, we were insulated, but in California, people being thrown in jail for this, not to mention all the other ridiculousness. My point being, why haven't we talked about it? It should be the thing. How many years did have we tried to come to grips with the JFK assassination? And it's still we talk more about that than we do COVID. And COVID's the thing that's impacting our lives today. It's stunning to me that the whole thing's been memory hold.
Yeah, and there's you're spot on about the massive waste of stimulus dollars that poured in that fueled inflation.
And that really was the point I wanted to get to through all this. I got sidetracked.
But no, you're right on the other part too. And I want to say the other thing is that there's just a handful of policymakers out there that are trying to get accountability on this. I think of Rand Paul as being one of them, who's basically fighting an uphill battle by himself of trying to get accountability of Fauci and trying to get answers.
But we've gotten the answers and no one cares.
No one cares, and there's a lot of I think politics plays a role in this as well, and that means if if and I hate to say it, but that means people have to admit that the Trump administration made some mistakes, and there's probably people that don't want to admit that.
Well, I will.
I mean, and so and you know, we have short memories.
Yeah, my main thing is this: you're not always going to have leaders who will respect your, I think Trump tried to be measured. I think he got some things wrong. I think we got most of it right here in Iowa, and I know there's conservatives that disagree with me on that, but I even living through it at the time, I was like, man, I'm thankful to be in Iowa. I'm not, my point is not to suggest any policy changes. I'm not even talking about any bills at the Capitol this year. I just wish the Rand Pauls of the world could be heard and we could get answers on it. And I also, and the part that we can control, John, is to continue to make the point that the policies of the federal government, as we went through COVID, have rippled into our fiscal situation today and will for some time to come. So, is that all fair?
It is, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that having been said, speaking of money and dollars, the March REC.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing all the talking to you, John. You're welcome to jump in, but I'm going to set the table. We've talked about this in the past. The Revenue Estimating Conference is a panel of three people. There is the governor's appointee, there is the Legislative Services Agency appointee, and a private sector appointee that get together and try to guesstimate. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but how much money is the state going to collect in the future so that the legislature can plan? Great. They meet three times a year, and we got the March estimate this week. It's not meant to be exact. It is an estimate. And where are we at, John?
Yeah, so this one was, they're all important because, like you said, this is an estimate, but this one's important because depending on their forecast, the Iowa law says the legislature has to take the lower of the March or December estimate as sort of the building the base for the what will be the fiscal year 27 general fund budget, and it actually kind of was I think it would be fair to say kind of a status quo situation, especially given the changing circumstances that we're in. And so what they did is they lowered the revenue a little bit for our current fiscal year, which is 26, and they lowered that by about $46 million. And then
it's not nothing, but it's not a lot either.
Yeah. And so and there's a number of factors for that we can get into. And then just quickly, they're optimistic about that. We're still showing that revenues are starting to turn around, starting in fiscal year 27, and then in 28 as well. But what's going on here is what everyone's saying that. Well, first of all, I want to just say that Director Paulson was correct when he said that Iowa's fiscal foundation is solid, and that's true. And in fact, last week, prior to this, and just recently, we had Moody's and Fitch both reaffirm Iowa's AAA credit rating, and so that in a sense is a reaffirmation of sort of the sound budgeting practices that the legislature and Governor Reynolds has been doing.
I'm going to jump in with a shameless plug. You have written on this. It's up at itrfoundation.org about these credit rating reviews, Iowa's fiscal stability. So this is, if you want to read more about this, is up on itrfoundation.org.
Yep. And so we do have, as Director Paulson said, also reserves to cover the gap, and part of that was planned for with the phase-in of the tax cut. But the problem is that we've sort of had a perfect storm situation where and this doesn't really get explained well in the media, is that Iowa's revenue has been kind of hit hard by a couple different fronts. One being the economic pressures that we've seen with the agricultural economy, and then sort of the coming out of the inflation. And the other thing is federal policy changes.
One big beautiful
occurring.
bill.
Yes, yep. And now the other thing is the war with Iran. That's creating some uncertainty that, we just don't know yet what kind of implications that will have. So, that combination has really created some uncertainty with the economy. But you mentioned we started out talking about COVID, and one of the reasons why Iowa emerged out of COVID stronger than most states was because of conservative budgeting. And, we were, I think, one of the strongest states to come out of the pandemic.
I think you can make an argument, perhaps a strong argument, that the fiscal discipline through that period is what gave us a 3.8% flat tax.
Oh, absolutely. Hands down.
And
yeah.
So it was not just the strong leadership on shutdowns, et cetera, but it was also the fiscal discipline by the legislature and the governor, both of those working in tandem, that gave us such a strong foundation.
Yeah. The other problem that I don't think there's any solutions, or any easy solutions, and that is the other problem that policymakers are having to deal with is that you have currently a $70 million deficit for Medicaid, and for next fiscal year in 27, $200 million deficit for Medicaid, and so Medicaid's a huge problem.
Yeah, it is, and I think in a future episode I'd like to spend a little time exploring that. John. The fundamental problem is the range of benefits and who we cover is far too expensive. I'm not even suggesting a specific policy proposal, although if you push me on it, John, I got a couple ideas. Mm-hmm. But that is, we're coming to grips with the fact that Iowa is a Medicaid expansion state. We cover a broader population of people inside of Medicaid. We have accepted that there are some services that we will provide. Okay, that's a decision. That also comes with a cost, and now you have to pay for it. And so there it is. So they got to find the money to fill up Medicaid. They've got to cover the loss of revenue from the one big beautiful bill, and there are some positives to that will help in terms of economic growth and puts more dollars in Iowa's pockets. There is, obviously, we had a reduction in revenue from the income tax cuts, good, planned. All of those things have come together. And through all of that, Director Paulson's right. We have the resources to cover this. We planned for this. And we will figure it out. And on the other side of that, we're going to be left with a 3.8% flat tax that still puts Iowa in the top half of states in this country for tax competitiveness.
I want to say something that, and this is what when you were leader, that you did in the 2018 bill, that first major tax bill that went through. And that was something I don't think gets enough credit. And something they said yesterday during the REC meeting is that for a long time, Iowa has been having strong sales and use tax collections, and I think the reason for that is because of the sales tax reforms that were made starting in that 2018 tax reform bill. And I know a lot of focus was made on the income tax part of that, but I think the base broadening that you guys did in that bill was very important at that time and doesn't get enough credit. And that helped us through COVID. That's helping us now. And when I looked at the revenue projections for fiscal year 27, you're basically seeing sales tax and income tax basically becoming even now, and I think that's a good thing. Especially as we get a lower income tax. And so base broadening is a very good idea with that sales tax. And I think that's one thing that we need to point out.
We generally support base broadening as a concept if it's coupled with corresponding good tax policy, just to make sure that everyone pays, right? There were too many there are too many holes in the
Yeah.
sales tax code. And what we tried to do at the time, and it happened because of some court decisions, but at that time, you could buy something online and not pay sales tax on it. Whereas if you tried to go to your local small town store, you had to pay sales tax there. So the online out-of-state company was getting a 7% advantage off of the small town retailer or the big city Walmart. I don't care, which is unfair. Mm-hmm. And we're all about trying to keep businesses alive in our small towns. Well, that's just a matter of fairness. There was digital consumption, where if you bought a piece of software on a DVD, that was taxed, but if you just downloaded it, it was not. Well, it's still the same product. It's just how are you storing the data? Subscription services or some other things in there that were all about fairness inside of that tax code, but it also provided, because you were able to broaden the base, you're able to drive more broad-based income tax reform. So you get that. You talk about good tax policy, it's more than just the top line number that you get.
Yeah.
It's all the inputs as well, and making sure that it's fair and equally applied. But it is interesting to see, you're right though, the personal income tax and sales and use tax right at about even. Frankly, for fiscal year 27, within $25 million of each other, which is nothing. It'll be interesting to see. I wanted to point out too, this is our first look at fiscal year 28. So that would be the year beginning July of 2027. So a year, 15 months, 16, I don't know, whatever from now. And they have a 2.9% growth rate. Usually that's a little bit conservative when they issue that far out. They don't want to give everybody too much optimism, but at the end of the day, you've got really strong growth for the fiscal year that we're going into. Looks like it's going to be good growth for the next year. And now the challenge is just to continue to restrain spending so this will all work, which, as we've talked about over and over again, whether we're talking about property taxes and local reform or state government, making sure that these numbers still work, it has to be an ongoing commitment to fiscal discipline and not overspending.
That's right. And I just a couple things with the 46 million decline. That was and this is what REC pointed out yesterday was the implication of One Big Beautiful Bill Act and from corporate receipts being lower than expected. So that's just one example of federal policy implications, and we're hoping that as we see, in a sense, the business side of those tax reforms in that federal tax bill, the Trump tax cuts part 2, if you want to call it that, take effect, that will actually have some kind of a growth impact for Iowa and actually for the economy as a whole, which a lot of economies are thinking about. And then I just want to say quickly, just going back to those credit ratings of Moody's and Fitch, and one thing when you look inside the statements that they made is they credit Iowa with conservative budgeting, and that's one of the reasons why they say that they reaffirmed the AAA status is that we have our pension system is shored up. We don't have a lot of debt, and so we have that conservative budget. Now they do offer some warning signs, especially pertaining to Medicaid and education, which are both on autopilot, and so they do say be careful with your spending because of there is economic factors out there that could really create some trouble too. So that's why, as you said, I mean that's why limiting spending and being conservative is really a priority right now.
For me, the credit rating conversation, obviously you want your state to have a good credit rating because there is still debt and so on and so forth. These folks, their whole job is to assess the fiscal health of whoever it is that they're looking at, right? So we ought to trust the people whose job it is to take a look at these things and say, you're on strong fiscal footing, not your favorite Democrat politician who's trying to get himself elected, right? Who is it? Because I guess my point is, don't buy the doom and gloom that's being sown by the people that want to get themselves elected. The policies that were advanced by Governor Reynolds and the legislature on tax policy, they will work. And the evidence is that we continue to have people who are experts in the field say things look good, but make sure you don't spend too much money while we're getting there, right?
Yep.
Great. I'm good. Anything else in that, John? I think we solved it.
Yes, yeah.
It's all done.
Yep.
All right. Well, one thing that we're tracking in real time, today is the final day of the deadline to file for the June primary in Iowa elections. So for the most part, if you intend to be on the ballot this year for governor, senator, Congress, legislature, you need to have your petitions in by the end of business today with the Secretary of State's office. So we're tracking that, seeing who files, who doesn't. There's always surprises on that list. There's blanks on the ballot where you're wondering if they're going to get their signatures turned in. And so that's what nerds like me do on days like today, because it's a big day, right?
Is there any surprises yet, do you think?
There's a few blanks on the ballot where I'm wondering if somebody's actually going to turn those petitions in. There is usually, by this point, if you had maybe a legislative retirement, you should have indicated that in other people running. You hate to see blanks in competitive seats. That's the one thing. I think you will see, you've already sort of seen this week. I think there was one Republican congressional candidate that dropped out this week. Usually that's an indication I didn't have the signatures. Or maybe they just realized it wasn't coming together. But especially for congressional statewide, it's a big piece of work to get all those signatures collected and filed. It's hard. And it's an organizational test. For the legislature, it's pretty easy to get those signatures if you plan ahead. But I haven't seen a real shocker yet, but we are going to, in a soon-to-be released, recorded and released episode, we're going to go through all that and take a look at it. But rest assured that we are tracking that as we go through it. And then once we get that and get through the end of session, it's off to the races for election 2026. And that's going to be fun to track.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right, John. That's all I got.
Yeah.
You told me you didn't have anything else, but here we go.
Yeah, I do.
What do you got?
All
right.
Just a shameless promotion, but this morning a new article was posted on the foundation website, and it's sort of a article debate, an online debate between myself and our good friend Vance Ginn, and we're debating what is conservatism. So
oh boy,
I encourage our listeners, if you're interested in that, to look at both articles, and there's a little intro video as well that's done. Our colleague Barry did a good job putting that together, and so I invite our listeners to take a look at that debate and see who they agree with.
No.
So if you don't agree with me, that's fine. I don't.
Is it really fine, John?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yep,
I'll buy that.
yep.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, that's you can check that out at itrfoundation.org. But thanks for bringing that to our attention, John. Thanks for everything again, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. And with all that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.